there was pressure points on my body, and she was pushing down on them. And when she was doing that, and honestly, it felt like, you know, when you release the air out of a valve and you can hear, it felt like the pressure was being released out of my body. And sat there, she did that for an hour, and all she said to me was just close your eyes and just think about like life. And that was it. And then she was talking while she was doing it, and she's pushing down. And then, you know what, after the hour, I felt like, it's like I said to you earlier, it's like on the outside we've got this smiley happy face, on the inside we've got this little child with like a cloak around him. It felt like the cloak had gone, and since that day.
Okay, well, welcome to another episode of Searching for Truth. With me today, I have got a lovely gentleman called Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hi.
Hi. So, Steve, it's really interesting talking to you. You are in Birmingham, and I have just left Birmingham as we speak now. So, quite a distance away. But from listening to what you have shared with me about your story, you and I, when it comes to trauma and the effects of trauma and the damage that it can kind of trail along with us over decades, is we kind of have that in common. Yeah,
it's, you know what, it's just something that stays in your mind, and it just stays with you until you're ready to talk or speak about it. And it's took me a long time. It's took me a very, very long time, but I'm at that part of my life where now I don't feel afraid to share it, and I don't feel afraid to talk about it in that sense. And I don't feel, you know what, people say, oh, you feel ashamed. No, I don't feel ashamed, because I wasn't the perpetrator in anything that happened to me. So yeah, and people need to know.
Yeah, well, thank you. And you know, it's a big thing sharing your story. It was one of the biggest healers for me, standing up and talking in front of an audience. Yeah. And obviously it is just me and you now, but it's that whole, other people are going to hear my story, other people are going to see me sharing my story, and all sorts of emotions build up and mental issues build up when we hold on to trauma ourselves. And that's what you've been doing. I feel absolutely honored that you're here. We will talk about how you got here later on, because it's a real positive story to how you got here. And I think it's going to just go on in that direction. So, Steve, tell me, I know neglect is something that occurred at a very young age. And do you want to share a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, my story is pretty weird, because I grew up in another country with my parents, lived with my parents and so forth, and grew up like a normal 2-3-year-old, and we had a neighbour who used to sort of look after me from time to time and stuff like that, and basically he took advantage on a few occasions. Could probably count on double figures over a period of a couple of years, but I think I was probably about 4, 5 at the time, so I just didn't know who to talk to, who I could talk to, because this said person he was like a family member. Even though they were like our neighbours, they were like family. We grew up together. They respected my family, and my family obviously respected theirs in that sense. So, I'm just a kid growing up in the middle of nowhere.
Well, at the age of four, you most certainly don't know fully what's right and wrong, but you do know the difference between a child and an adult.
Yeah.
And you do know that the adults, even at 4, that we've been conditioned to believe that they are the ones that we look up to.
Yeah, yeah.
So
honestly,
it's like a silence really of
yeah,
confusion, I feel,
yeah.
maybe.
Because as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, you know, you don't know if it's right or wrong what they're doing to you, because you're just a child. You're just a sponge still at that age where your brain's still developing, and it's still nourishing things. But like I said, I never spoke about it, never told anyone, because to me it was normal. Because that I come from a Sikh background now, nobody speaks about it. No one will speak, or they don't know how to speak about it, or where to go, or which groups they can speak to about it. And I think that's what I think the most that's got me is like, you know what, people don't know where to turn to, people don't know who they can speak to. And me as a 4-year-old living out in another country, I definitely wouldn't have had a clue who to speak to. Even like your parents, I live with my parents, I wouldn't know what to say to them, because to me, I don't know, at that age, you don't know if that person's doing right or wrong. It's only later, as you're growing, as you get a little bit older, and your mind's, then you think back and you think, you know, that wasn't right.
That wasn't right. Yeah.
And it wasn't
Now,
right. And
for a lot of children, it can be acts like that become like the ultimate traumatic event that then evolves into other traumatic events. Now, actually, what happened a few years later with you kind of really just almost propelled that, or took over that, or whatever the right phrase is. And that's why I mentioned neglect, because when you were sharing that story with me, it was like, okay, so there was that, and now there's, and like you say, I feel from what you've told me, the memories of that didn't really come until later in life. It was what you endured after that, up to that later in life. That, will you share some of that with us, Steve?
So basically, I was born in the UK. My parents moved back to India, but I think it was 1977. I might be wrong, it might have been 1976, but all I know is I think I was about a year old, just over a year old at the most. Lived out there, and then unbeknown to me, at the age of, I just turned 7 in December, and my dad and his younger sister had decided that she was going to bring me back to the UK to live with her, but no one ever told me. All I know is my cousins have come over from the UK. Never met them before. Don't know who they are. I'm just a 6-year-old turned 7-year-old kid living his best life, as they would say, on a farm somewhere. But the next thing I know, spent a few weeks with them. Drove for 12 hours to Delhi. Next thing I know, I arrive, get off a plane, and I'm in the UK. Heathrow Airport, and I think it was I'm sure it was February the 16th, 1983. And
so it would have been cold then, coming back from India. Would have been really cold.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not, like I says, I don't have no memories of the UK prior to that, because I was just a toddler. So my upbringing has always been living with my parents, my grandparents, my extended family out there, my friends, going to school like normal little kids do, and stuff, coming home, and the next thing you know, like, bam, everything's gone.
Did you have any explanation? I mean, so you're 6, what, you think you're 6, 7 years old?
I just turned 7. My birthday's in December, so I just turned 7. No, no one ever spoke anything to me about it. From what I remember from that age, no one said nothing, no one mentioned anything. All I know is my cousins have come over, that, oh, they've just come for a holiday, like people do. They go to visit their family back home. But no one ever said to me, oh, you're going to live with them, you're going to go with them. And no one ever said nothing.
Do you remember an emotional goodbye from your mother?
All I remember is being at the airport, giving my mum and dad a hug, and just playing with my cousins. Next thing I know, they must have gone through passport control and all that. But I'm just running around with my cousins.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I mean, and that is such an age of vulnerability, sensitivity. What was going on with you then? What were you feeling? Can you remember?
I remember going for, well, I wasn't at school because obviously I had to. I remember going to the GPs quite a lot to have tests. So I'm assuming it was for tests for like malaria and things like that. So and I remember, and I always remember that, in the sense that it's probably sort of once a month or something. I was going to the family GP, and they would do blood tests and things. But I didn't, you know what? Honestly, I felt nothing because it was. I was just confused. It's like, where's my parent? I do remember asking my aunt where my mum and dad were, and she said they're back at the farm, and that was it. But my aunt was a busy woman. She had her own businesses, and things like that. So it was like.
Did she have other children?
Yeah, she's got three kids of their own, and we're pretty close. We grew up pretty close, in that sense. But I don't know. I think I've always felt like an outsider.
Can I share with you? Can I share as soon, you know, you just said, oh, I don't know. But as you were talking, I felt I do know. And I was really, this is what was happening when we had our conversation. So being adopted, for me, being adopted into a white family, I had the love, and I had the, you know, the playroom and the children to play with.
Yeah.
But I felt incredibly different to everyone else.
Yeah.
So it didn't mean on the outside that I was like, you know, you would have wanted to send me somewhere because I didn't look happy.
Yeah.
But it was all going on the inside.
Yeah.
Where, and I would daydream. That's what I've written my chapter about, which I'll talk to you again about you doing the same thing. But it was about the daydreaming that I was doing. Basically, I was like locked in myself, but I didn't outwardly look unhappy. Is that how it sort of was for you?
I think you know what, you become very good at a poker face, because on the outside you're just, like you say, you're smiling and you're happy, you talk to people, but on the inside it feels so dark. You're just in a dark, and you know what, it's like I can picture it. Outside I'm bubbly, but if you look underneath, it's just all dark with a little kid standing there in the corner on its own. And I felt that, you know what, I probably still feel it to this day in that sense. I felt it at family weddings, birthdays, parties and stuff like that, because everyone was running around and playing and stuff. Yeah, I played with them and stuff, but I became very quiet in that sense. Whereas I remember growing up when I was a kid out there in India and stuff, and being loud and always happy, singing, dancing, stuff like that. But when I came here, it stopped.
So you were a happy boy there. I know you've touched on what happened, and obviously very young, and so still probably a bit confused about that, but not really a thing. And you were happy dancing around. Yeah. And then really what's hitting my heart, Steve, as you're talking, and you know, everyone's playing back in the UK, but it's like, for you, it's like, and it was for me, as much as I had an adoptive mum and dad, where's my birth mum and dad?
Yeah, I had that, and you know what, I still feel it to this day, in the sense, if we've got a family wedding, say, the way I look at it is, everybody's there with their parents, with their grandparents and everything, but it's just me on my own.
See, what I would want to do for you, you know, when I hear these stories, and I want to take that boy that was you, and I want to, you know, as your auntie, or as I'm not sort of disrespecting your auntie or anyone, but as anyone with a boy like that hasn't got their mum and dad, And I guess it's because I felt it myself as well. It's they really just need a hug and to be known that they are loved and they've got unconditional love from somewhere, wherever it comes from, just to know that you've got it.
All I wanted was a hug. Yes, you know what, my heart. I've got nothing but respect for her. At the end of the day, she brought me up. I'm in my 40s. In that sense, I love her. I love her like my mum, but she's not my mum, and I felt that. Even though she's not wanted me to feel it, or in her eyes thought, you know what, she's doing everything, but I always felt like I was the odd one out. I always felt like I was, yes, I'm a part of that family, but I'm not, in a way as well.
Yeah, I know, and we're going to be talking about the effects of that, because, and also I'd like you to share the reasons why. It's because it wasn't just a matter of, oh, we don't want you anymore. I think things could have been handled a bit differently, and again, it's probably because of the community and the culture, but there was a reason for you to bring you back to the UK, wasn't there? It was for you and being able to stay in the UK.
Yeah, I think that we've, in my community, in the Asian community, they've got this thing about go to the Western world and you'll have a better life. And I think the bottom line of it is, between them, they decided, you know what, he'd have a better life living in the UK than he will in rural northern India. But to me, personally, there's nothing more a child wants than to be with who they've grown up with, in that sense, who they believe to be their parents, who they believe to be the ones that are going to give them everything they want in life. And like I said, it's not even wanting a lot, it's just wanting a hug and someone to put their arm around you and say, you know what, you ain't alone, but you don't get it.
Did you not have any communication with your mum and dad after you left?
Not until I think I was about 13, 14, first time I ever saw them. And I remember going back to India with my other aunt lives here as well, so her and her two daughters and husband, we all went. And I remember getting off at the airport, and I remember seeing my mum and dad for the very first time after what? 7 years?
7 years, yeah.
7 years. And I remember I didn't feel nothing, because half of my life I didn't know them. The only time I remember them is probably from when I was 3 to 7. I don't remember the first 2 years of my life, and I certainly don't remember them from the age of 7 to 14, because never even got a phone call, never even got a letter, so never got any answers from anyone. And to be fair, I probably never asked any questions, because I'd become that introvert. I just stopped. I didn't question nothing. It was like, you're here, this is family, this is what we do, we work, we go to school, and that was it. But no, and I remember, and I remember the 10-11 hour drive back from the airport to our house. I remember sitting with my mum and dad, and I remember my dad talking to me, and you know what, and I had so many questions, but I didn't know how to ask, and I didn't know how to ask, and I didn't know. But then I saw my mum, and you know what, first thing my mum did was give me a hug.
How did that feel? You're gone then.
I can't, you know what, I can't describe it. It's like it's like that saying, you get a fuzzy feeling, you get a warm fuzzy feeling, and you know what, I did, probably for the first time.
Your mum, man. It's your mum.
Yeah.
It's regardless of yeah. And the effects of this have been pretty huge for you. over the decades? You're faring well, by the way, looking at you, because I know I won't
We
share your
try.
age, but you're faring well. But the effects of this, because some people might, you know, men, I don't know, maybe from your community, even like, oh, man up, you know, man
Yeah.
up, hands up, you know, it happens to the best of us. But what happens to the best of us inside? How are you internally internalizing that as a 7-year-old, as a 13-year-old, when you see your mum and dad for the first time? And then what are you telling yourself about yourself?
Yeah.
And believing about yourself? And that's where the destruction comes from. For me, and I'll let you obviously share yours, but for me, what happened to me, I internalized that as being bad.
Yeah.
I'm bad. I'm not worthy of good because I'm bad. But that is so far from the truth.
Yeah.
But at 7, 8 years old, well, I didn't know that. That's the way the world was coming across to me. And you carry that sometimes to your grave.
Yeah,
so it is really important that we get this out, because it isn't just a thing. It's something that's still happening now, and children and adults are carrying this, and it's time to start releasing it, because I know it's a big release for you talking now.
Oh, definitely. And like you say, it's like with the Asian community, with sort of really any community, and especially men, and especially in this day and age, you know what? People need more signposts to say you got help here, you got help here. Nobody knows that there's help out there, and I certainly didn't know. I knew there was out there, you could go and get counselling and blah and all the etc., but counselling doesn't always resolve it. I've had counselling. I've had counselling previously, and you know what? I've probably had counselling most of my life, but it doesn't clear it. You talk about it, but those feelings, everything is still inside until you get to that point. It's like, you know what? Nah, this is not right, and it's not happening anymore. And like you say, it's still happening in this day and age. There's young kids still being sent over for a better life in a Western country. But all I want to say to the people in my community and any male, you know what? There's people out there. Just talk. If you're not sure about where to seek help, speak to your GP. Your GP will. Oh, you know what? I know in our community at the temple I go to, there's a massive thing on mental health. They're pushing people to say, you know what? You need to talk, especially you blokes sitting over there. You need to come and talk. And if you don't know where to go, we can signpost you. And you know what? And it is. And like I said, it's took me, like you say, decades to get to build up the courage to say, you know what? Yeah, I've had counselling, I've done it, but you have counselling and you think, yeah, everything's fine, but it's not, because it comes back. It's there. It's never going to go away, and it will stay with you in that sense. But you've got help out there, and the best thing you can do is talk.
Yeah, really can, because it's a releasing of the emotions. It's a releasing of them. But then also understanding. And I think counselling can work, but I feel it can be quite a long process in just kind of shutting it out. We'll come to some therapies that I know you've experienced that have worked a lot quicker than that. And we're going to talk about that. But before we do, can we just touch on a little bit more about the effects and the destruction? Because you've had a relationship, you've got a son, you're a great father, and well, we'll come to that when you talk about it. But how was it then for you, for example, late teens into your early 20s? What was Steve like then?
You know what? I got my escape from the age of 11 was sport. Was always sport. I was always into my sports. I was quite good at sports and things, and especially football. And that was my escape. But I always felt alone in that sense. I got into a relationship when I was 16, and you know what? That relationship lasted for 15 years, and I was married for 10 of those years, and that's the lady who's the mother of my son. and we still talk to this day. And it wasn't until a few years in, whereas, but we had back in the 90s, because she was from a different background to mine, there was a lot of that into faith marriages. Oh, it's not happening. There's people on my side of the family who disapproved, who stopped talking to me, and they still don't talk to me. I've been divorced 15 years, yet you still don't talk to me in that sense because of what happened. But you know what, it just felt nice being wanted, if you get what I mean. It was knowing, you know what, I'm coming home and there's someone at home, in that sense, that I've got a partner, I've got someone that I can confide in, I can speak to about anything, and I don't think I ever had that before. So in a way, I think it's the craving of being with someone and wanting, and things work out, some things don't work out, but I personally think it's had an effect on me in regards to relationships. I have an issue with trust. I don't trust people, and it's not.
Well, that makes perfect sense, really, when you look at the beliefs that you would have laid out when you were a child. The trust is going to be a massive issue.
To this day, I don't trust. I can probably count on my one hand how many people I trust in my life. I don't trust anyone, and I don't, in that sense, because you know what, the way I see it is, people always say, oh, we love you, we do this, we love you, we're here for you and everything, but they always go away. They just, without a justifiable reason. Oh, it's not you, it's me, I've got things to sort out, my head's not right. But like I said, it's the way I look at it now, and especially after having sort of therapy, as we're going to talk about, it's not, you know what, it's not me. That's all I know. It's not me. I know who I am. I know what I need to do. I know where I'm going, and I definitely know where I've come from, and I know what's happened in the middle. And now is the point where you think, you know what, that ain't me. No, that ain't me. I'm the one that's, you know what, I got nothing to hide. I got nothing to say bad about people, because you know what, everyone does good, everyone does bad, but I feel free in the sense that I don't have a burden, and I don't feel the burden of other people's issues being played out in my relationship with them, because you know what, those are your issues. I'm here for you. And sometimes, most of my life, I feel like I'm a counselor to people. I feel like I attract people that need help. I help them for 6 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years. And then all of a sudden it's like they get better in a way. And then they're like, oh, see ya. And they're gone. And I hardly hear from them. And that's it. And you know what, it's like I said, I know who I am, and I know where I'm going, and you know what, that's your choice. And I've always said to people, it's your mind, it's your brain, it's your heart. Do what you want to do, because at the end of the day, it's only you who goes and shuts your front door and sits in your house that can tell you what to do. No one else can tell you what to do. No one pays your bills. No one gives you money. You get what I mean? I work hard for what I achieve, and everything I've had to achieve, and at one point, I remember, I think I had about £20 in my pocket in my savings account, and that was it. I've had bailiffs and knock on my door and stuff, and things like that, and I've asked for family members for help, and they've turned their back on me, and they've said, oh, we've got no money, we can't help you. And like I said, I trust a handful of people, and one of my closest friends turned up within 20 minutes, gave me the money, paid off the bailiff, and that was it. Yeah, you get what I mean? It's not about who your family are, it's about people who respect you in that sense. And you know what, I love my handful of friends. They know I'll do anything for them. They can ask me for anything, and then I will do it. And all I want in return is, you know what, just a bit of love, and just be honest with me. If you don't like me, tell me to my face. Don't talk behind my back. And that's what happened. And like I said, and it's had that effect on me psychologically. It's had that effect on me where, like I say, I think I've become a good judge of character of certain people and some people. And when I always say to people, if you're going to ask me for an opinion, be prepared to not hear what you want to hear, because if you're an idiot, I will tell you you're an idiot, and you might not like it. And I've had people fall out with me in regards to that, because I think it's made me a lot more honest and upfront with people, because I spent a couple of decades, my teenage years, just suppressing all of that, all my opinions, everything. I was like a sheep in that sense. It's like, oh, let's do this. Whereas now, no, I'm not a sheep, and I never will be. And you know what? That was, I think it was a way of me coping, in the sense, because I couldn't turn to an older male and say, look, this is what's going on in my head. I had no one to talk to. The only person I ever spoke to was my football coach. That was it.
Let's talk a little bit more about your football coach, because it was 10, 11 years old when he, what did he do? Did he give you a hug, or he gave you some good advice? Or?
He was having a bad time, and I wasn't feeling great and stuff, and obviously my head wasn't right, and we were playing a game, and I remember things just weren't feeling right, and then he took me to the side, and he just stood in front of me, and literally bent down on his knees, so he was level height with me, and he just said, "What's the matter?" And I just said, "You know what, I can't do this." And he went, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." And he literally gave me the biggest bear hug I've ever had. And prior to that, I don't ever remember having a hug like that, and I don't, from anybody. And he was one person I used to be able to talk to. I'd be asking for advice, or this is what he needs. And because of him, I ended up playing football all my life. I became a coach when I was 18, 19. So I started coaching kids. And you know what? I've always felt and attracted souls that need help. And some of these kids that I helped were from underprivileged areas. You know Birmingham pretty well, so Newtown, Handsworth, places like that. Yeah. I help people, kids, and to this day now, these kids are now in their 20s. My mobile phone number hasn't changed since 1999. I've had the same phone number. They still text me now, coach. Wow. And they still call me coach. Coach, can we just ask you what your advice on it? And you know what? And I love that, because you know what?
So they're in their 20s now, aren't they? Yeah, they're in their
yeah, they're in their 20s, and I still get asked, like, "Oh, coach, what should we do?" And I'm like, mate, it's your life, it's your brain. You need to use. But like, all I can be there is I'll always be there for them as like a sounding board. As I always say to them, I say, you know what, you're not sure about anything. Before you're going to do something stupid, just message me, and I will talk to you about it. And I still get that now. And like I said, I've got my doors open to them all the time, and they know that.
I've got no, it's no surprise to me, because of how you are and how you're coming across here is showing that as well. You know, I can imagine there's a lot of young boys, especially from your community, that would feel comfortable talking to you. Yeah. And it's where I see in this story the gifts. Many gifts have come from this, because you are able to use your experiences quite soon on to then help others. What I'm realizing later on in life is that's where it all comes from. That's where the push to help others comes from, because of we know how it feels. Yeah. But then in later life, I started feeling, well, hang on, I've still got some of that to sort. I've still got to give myself some of that still. I've still got things to heal myself, actually. You know, and it's easy to reflect that pain from yourself into something good for others, because then you're still not having to deal with it yourself. And that's where I've been. I feel from what we're going to work up to, that's where
all I've ever wanted is, you know, I just don't want other kids to feel anything like I did growing up. And that's me being that's honest, and that's not my own kid, that's any kid. because no kid should grow up thinking that way, and feeling like you're alone. And like I says, I respect my aunt, I respect my family here that brought me up, but the downside of it is they've done nothing wrong. They've loved me, they've treated me the same as they treated each other. But me personally, I felt like an outsider, but no one ever spoke to me about it. Oh, how do you actually feel growing up? No one ever asked me that question until I started talking. And then it was like, you know what, this is the first time, it's like first time people have actually asked me, how do you actually feel about it? My parents I speak to every week, and you know what, they look back at things and my parents have apologized to me and said, you know what, we did the wrong thing. But hindsight's a funny thing in that sense. But I think we wouldn't be here if it wasn't. But you get what I mean. It's like, you know what, I don't hate my parents. I love my parents to bits, because you know what, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. They're the ones that brought me into this world.
And your aunt was doing the best. They were all doing the best they thought with their best, with what they knew and how to do it. And obviously feelings and emotions now, as you say, in hindsight, but I feel that what you've told me, you want to try and make an impact on that area of speaking out and sharing those feelings and emotions and the importance of it, because otherwise you're going inwards, and that's what screws with your head. And it's causing all this mental damage in boys very young, some younger than you were, even at 7.
Yeah, I think especially like you say, it's like the adults make the decision. The adults do what they think is right for you, but not once do they think of it from the kid's point of view, in the sense of how are they going to actually feel? How does he feel, or how does she feel? They don't speak to them about it. And I get it, you know, like we said earlier, it still happens to this day and age. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It happens. It will carry on happening. People want a better life. They send their children away to families and stuff to look after and stuff. But these adults now, the next generation of adults, also need to know that, you know what, yes, you're doing the right thing. You're giving them a better life, but you need to talk to that kid as well about the psychological effect it's having on them. Because I personally think if I had someone like that from the age of 8, 9, 10, 11, I'd probably be different in that sense, because I would have been able to speak about, oh, this is how I feel. I actually feel like alone. I feel like a loner. I remember going, like I said earlier, I remember going to family parties and family weddings and stuff, and you know what, just sitting there thinking, and I do remember thinking, you know what, everyone's here with their families and I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's the thought that the adults need to get in their head, to say, you know what, we need to speak to this child. It's fair enough giving them hugs and food and this and that and the other, but that's not what we do.
It's something that's got to be introduced almost, because the reason it's not happening is because maybe it doesn't know how to happen. So elders weren't able to share their emotions either with their elders, and it's you know, I remember I've always known my mum and dad loved me unconditionally and still do to this day. But back in the early 70s and the 80s, it just wasn't the said thing to say it.
No.
You didn't say I love you.
No, you just
I got into the habit of, once I started on my journey in my 20s, I started saying, I love you, mom, I love you, mom. Now, 20 years later, it's just a thing. We wouldn't even go without saying I love you at the end of the call.
I'm exactly the same. I can't remember ever saying that word growing up as a kid. And I think the first person I probably ever said that to was my ex-wife. I don't remember saying it to my parents. I don't remember saying it to my cousins, and I don't remember saying it to my aunt or anyone. The first person I can probably say is probably my ex-wife. And now, like you, every time I speak to my son, always end it with "I love you," and if he's with his friends, he's like, "Yeah, okay," but if he's on his own, he'll say it back. And you know what? And and that's all we crave is just a little bit of love and a little bit of affection, and just and like you say, in that generation, they didn't think about stuff like that. They didn't think about the, oh, look at the psychological effect it's going to have on this kid or on that person. And like you say, I don't think they know. I don't think they know how to ask those questions in that sense. Whereas our generation, I think our mentality is slightly different in that sense, because we are more mindfulness and aware of the psychological effects of certain things and stuff. And previously, people haven't spoken about it, but like I said, with our generation, I think we've plucked up the courage and we've got to that point in life now where it's like, you know what, no, it needs to be out there, and people need to be made aware that, you know what, you, like we said earlier, you can get help. There's people, it's just knowing which way to go. And and I always say to people, if you're not sure, just, you know what, ask your GP, or I say to people, you know, ask me. I will find, even if
we
it means
can also leave stuff in the links in the comments as well, if you've got any you know, references to where people can find support. Just try and build up that for others that are watching this, if they do. Can I just touch on, obviously you were married, but then you weren't.
Yeah.
Was the ending of that, do you feel anything to do with your sort of psychological effects growing up?
Yeah. Financially, I've always struggled. I wasn't fortunate enough to really go to college and stuff, because we had family businesses, and from the age of 8, 9, I always helped out. I always worked in there, and then from the age of sort of when I was supposed to do sort of GCSEs, go into college, I had to work in one of the businesses for a long period. So basically, my education, in what I feel, got sacrificed for the family businesses, in the sense that I grew up thinking, you know what, this is our family, this is our businesses, this is all I'm going to do for you do, because back in the day, this is what we do. And then turned 20, 19, 20, businesses all got sold. What do I do? And then it was just like trying to find a job, and that was it. And then really,
Are you married at this point?
I got married at 20. I got married at 21. So at that point, I was still, like I said, I'm just trying to find my way in the world, in that sense of. But I've always felt that financially, I've never had any help. Yes, the house I live in now, my little cousin brother helped me to purchase it, and I love him to bits for that, and I always will, because you know what, he if it wasn't for him, I'd still be renting, and I love him and his family. I love to bits. His own little wife and kids and stuff. I love him to bits, and I always will. He means the world to me, and he knows that. But other than that, financially, I've always struggled, and my marriage breakdown, I think it was a lot to do with the financial burden, because we all want things, we all want better things, we all want things, but when you haven't got an education, there's only certain jobs you can do. And luckily for me, I was fortunate enough to get a job that I loved, and it paid pretty well in that sense. But
is that as a coach? Is that when you were?
No. It was nothing to do with football at all.
Oh, okay.
I worked for a prior to the bank, I worked for a car company. So you know, like things like the motor shows and things like that. So I used to help do like the stands at the motor shows and things.
Oh, okay, brilliant.
Car launches and things like that. So and then so I did that. My coaching I've always done for free. I don't charge anyone for it.
You're like me. Just like
So
anything
and that
for
was
the children.
The way I feel like you know, like when the first generation of Asians came over in the 60s and late 50s, 60s and 70s, and they were living in 4 families in a terraced house with 10 people in one room. They had nothing. The way I feel, look at it, is I felt like I was one of those, whereas I felt like I couldn't ask my aunt and them lot for finances and money, because she'd brought me up. She'd done enough. I couldn't ask her for money. I'm not going to ask her for money. I don't ask anybody for money. If I don't have it, I don't buy it. That's the way I look at it. And I think, and that was one of the main factors of my marriage breakdown. But it was the psychological effect of stressing. But I wouldn't, and I never spoke to her about it. And if I had, things probably wouldn't be different. But because I didn't know how to project my feelings when it came to things of the mind and what was on my mind, I didn't know how to communicate that. And inevitably we ended up in divorce. But like I said, we have a really good relationship, and I still ask her for advice when it comes to certain things.
I love that. And I love the fact as well, from what you've told me, your son, who's in his late teens now, it always warms my heart when I hear father-son stories, because I know how important it is. Like in this story, for you, you didn't have your dad. So how much more of that sort of emotion is now geared for good towards your son, because it's obvious you've got a very good relationship, and you've sacrificed many of your nights out to be a good father and be with your son. So just share with us a little bit about that.
You know what? My priority, I got divorced when my son was 1.5, and myself and my ex-partner have always had, never went to court and stuff like that. We just went like 50-50. You having these days, I'm having, that was it. It just so happened that I had him on a Thursday, Friday, and a Saturday night that everybody goes out. So my choice was, you know what? And people used to say to me, "Oh, we're going out to the pub." I'm like, "No, I'm going to go pick my son up from school, or from nursery. Going home, what you doing?" He'd be in bed at 7 o'clock, but you know what? He was here with me, and I'm very and people that know me, I'm very protective when it comes to him. And to be fair, I'm very protective of any kid, be it my own son, even like my nieces and nephews. I'm very protective of them. But even kids that I don't know, if I see someone doing wrong, I'm one of those people that, you know what people say, "Oh, no one stop." I'm one of those people that will stop and say, "You know what you're doing." And I used to get it when I had my dog before he passed away. I used to go for a walk, and I used to get it from some of the kids. And I got to know some of the kids when I moved back to where I live now in Birmingham after my divorce, in the park, because I used to see me twice a day in the park with my dog, and they'd come and talk to me, and I started talking, and you get to know this, and you think, you know what, some of these kids, all they need is just someone to just talk to, because all they're doing is they're in the park, they're 14, 15 years of age, they're just sitting there smoking weed, and they're like making funny comments when people are going past, and I'm one of the people that will turn around and say, "What'd you say?" and then have a conversation with them. And I'm not scared. And you know what? I'm not the biggest person. I'm 5'7". I'm not, but you know what? The way I look at it, the way my life has been, I'm not scared of nothing, and I'm not scared of anything or anyone, apart from heights, which I'm petrified of. But other than that, I deal with them things. So when it comes to my son, I've always put him first.
Yeah.
I've always put him for whatever he wants, he gets. But I've also, myself and my ex-wife, we've also instilled in him the principles and values of money and finance and talking to people. And if you don't work hard, you don't get nothing. And I use myself as a prime example. I say to him, look, people say to you, "Oh, this," when you see my friends or when you see people that I've played football with, they always say to you, "If you're as half as good as your dad, you'll be okay." I says, but I always say to him, he's a different player to me. He plays different type of game. Simple. I says, but he's good in his own way. I'm good in my own. And I've always said that to him. You need to have self-belief. And you know what? Growing up in my 20s, I never had self-belief in that sense, because no one ever sort of gave you that self-belief. So now with him, we try and give him as much belief. You know what? He's capable of anything.
But this is sorry, I was just saying, this is the positive thing in this, because it's like it stops with you. Yeah. You know, like if you think about the family, you coming over, the way that it was, if you hadn't have felt away or just sort of, oh, you know, just carried on with it, chances are there'd be more children coming out of this that would still be feeling that locked inside. And actually what's happened, as painful as it's been for you, I believe that our creator, God, whoever you believe in, has chosen certain people for a reason to be able to take on this challenge to stop it. Because what you've actually done when you're talking about stories there, and even of your relationship with your ex-wife, the mother of your son, the fact that you are still in touch. I mean, there are so many, especially after with COVID, there are so many relationships that are now just ripping each other apart. And it breaks my heart that the children are within all of that. So when I hear your story, I'm like, you know what? It stops with you. This stops with you, because your son, it's not gonna, do you know what I mean? And I get quite overwhelmed when I you know, at that.
It is like I said to you earlier, I just don't want him to ever feel 1 inch how I felt growing up.
No.
Whereas with him, he knows he can talk to me about anything. And I've always said that to him, you know what, don't be scared to talk. I said, because that's me. I was scared to talk. Now I'm not. People that know me will say he never shuts up. I know, because you know what, I was quiet all my life. Up until I was 30, I was quiet. I kept my mouth shut. I kept my mouth shut just to make other people feel happy and better about themselves. But I was killing myself inside, like we said earlier. Inside, you become a very good poker face player. Even though I don't gamble and I don't play poker, you become very, very good at projecting this on the outside.
Yeah, at the outside. Well, we have decades of practice, don't we?
And I've always said that to him. I said, you know what, don't keep it in. If you need to talk, you know what, even if you don't want to talk to me, talk to your mom. If you don't want to talk to your mom, you know what, talk to one of your uncles, or talk to one of my friends at football, or talk to your mate. Because you guys aren't babies anymore. You're becoming adults. You guys, and like I said, he's pretty independent. He does his own thing in that sense, and he goes to festivals and sorts of things with his friends and stuff. So I don't worry about him in that sense. But as I said, my main thing with him was, you know what, I don't ever want him feeling any way at all like I did growing up, feeling like you can't talk to anyone, you don't have anyone. And that's how, and like I said, respect to my aunt and everyone and my family here, I felt like I didn't have anyone, and I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone. And like I said, growing up, and kids, family, people say horrible things to you, and I remember being called names and all sorts by my own cousins, but they're kids themselves. They don't realize, because that's
you're just following the trend and the trade. Steve, I want to touch on where you're at now, as you've sat here with me today on Searching for Truth. And what's happened? So what's going on now? Yeah, because we've also talked about a book, writing a chapter, and you know, there's release, there's energy release in here. Let's talk about it.
The stuff we've spoken about today is literally a snippet of what's happened to me in my life, in that sense. And every time I speak to people, they were like, you know what, you need to write a book. You need to write a book about what's happened to you. And I'm like, A, I don't have the finances, and B, I haven't got a Scooby-Doo how to go about writing a book. I can Google it, but it's not going to work. But so what happened was, I was in a relationship coming up to 18, 19 months. To me, everything was fine. We spoke every day and all sorts. And then, bang, out the blue, oh, I can't do this anymore. I've got stuff of my own going on, and that's it. So stop talking. I got blocked for no reason. And like I said, with me, when I said earlier, I just, without reason, people just go without giving me a justifiable reason. So I'm used to it. So now I'm like, you know what, that's another one I've gone. So what happened was, I was pretty down, and you know what, I still think about it, because when you love someone, and I do love this person, and I will for the rest of my life, because I thought I'd met the person that got me. They actually did get me in every sense of the way. And I told her about my story, and that was the second person apart from us now sharing. The only other person that knew my story was my ex-wife and this partner, and that was it. So I was and I got really down, and you know, I was in a bad place when it all broke down. I spoke to a friend of mine who knew Kim, who you also know, and basically forced me to go and have. My friend had booked speaking to me on the text, not even physically speak on the text. She texted a few times back, and she went, "I've booked you in an appointment. Here's the place. Here's the time. This is the date. I've paid for it. If you go, you go. If you don't, you don't. But I really think you should go." And I was like, "I'm not going. I'm not going. Not going. Not going. I don't need this. I've been through it." I went into that self-pity mode again. And then it was like, went to sleep, got up the next day, and was like, "No, you need to deal with this." So I texted my friend and said, "You know what? I promise you I will go to that appointment." So I went to the appointment with Kim, and it was traumatic therapy, trauma therapy. So it was, you know what? I honestly can't talk enough about how
You know
it
what I
felt.
love? As soon as you start talking, you just light up, you know.
You know what? It's like I said, it's like we've spoken a few times, and it's like I said to you, it's basically, I've recently in the last couple of years I've got into meditation and started to learn yoga and sort of the chakras and how the universe and everything works. And this lady does therapy on that basis. So I went to her and we did the trauma therapy. It's basically I'm lying down on a bed made of crystals. And she did say to me, she went, "There's going to be a lot of tears, and just let it out." And I went, "That's fine." So lying down on this, and she did say to me, "You might feel certain points where you'll feel hot points." And back of my shoulder blades for the hour that I was lying there were burning, literally burning. And what she was doing was she was like, there was pressure points on my body, so she was pushing down on them. And when she was doing that, and honestly, it felt like, you know, when you release the air out of a valve and you can hear, it felt like the pressure was being released out of my body. And sat there, she did that for an hour, and all she said to me was, "Just close your eyes and just think about life." And that was it. And then she was talking while she was doing, and she's pushing down. And then, you know what, after the hour, I felt like, it's like I said to you earlier, it's like on the outside we've got this smiley happy face, on the inside we've got this little child with like a cloak around him. It felt like the cloak had gone. And since that day, my body, no lie, I feel cold. My body actually feels cold. Whereas I felt, and like I was saying to you earlier, it felt like all of that stuff that I'd been holding in was just a blanket to keep me warm, and it wasn't. And like you say, every time I talk about Kim, I light up because I can't praise her enough. And this was just one session. It was just one session. Yeah. And I messaged her a week after to say, "You know what, honestly, I can't tell you how I feel, in the sense that it's because of her I'm talking to you, because she was the one that sort of," and I was like, "You know what, no, I need to talk." And it's like the saying, grab the bull by the horns, while, you know what, but I've noticed myself ever since that day, every time, even if I try and think of a negative thought, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It literally does not happen. It's like, "Why are you thinking negative, you idiot?" And then it's like something in my body just slaps me, like, "Get out of it." And I get a positive thought, but I also get this tingle. And so now and since then I've started reading more into the chakras and the third eye and things like that. And you know what, that for me, if I hadn't have spoken to my friend who hadn't have booked me in with Kim, I probably would have just gone through the same cycle for the next 30, 40 years.
Round and round and round and round. Up, a little bit up, then down and round.
Oh yeah,
and
you definitely
round.
have some highs, but when you go down, it's the worst of the worst. But like, since that day, and you know what, it's like now, it's about me. It's not about stuff that happened to me 30 years ago. I'm like I said, I'm free, happy. I'm happy to talk about it. I've got no, because you know what, it wasn't me. I didn't cause it to myself. Whereas previously, I think I always blamed myself for stuff like that. It's your own fault, Steve, because no, it's not my fault. It wasn't my fault I got sent here. It wasn't my fault no matter things happened to me in that sense. It wasn't my fault that financially I struggled. It was none of it was my doing in that sense. All I've tried to do is make the best of a bad thing that I grew up through. But now, like I said, if I can help even one person down the road who will be happy to speak about it, that's fine. Because you know what, the way I feel, I help them. And like I said to you the other week when we spoke, and sometimes I feel like we said earlier, I feel like I've been set here by whoever's up there looking down on all of us to say, you know what, there's people out there that need help. I'm going to send some people that I'm one of those that I attract them for some reason. I attract those people. I help them. I help them along. And then next thing I know, 18 months, 2 years, 12 months, see ya. And they go off. But
but you've been doing this now for decades. You've been doing this from your early 20s, like reaching out and helping others. It's obviously part of your journey. And I believe part of the reason why you're still experiencing and coming through this, just because it is a big part of it. But there's also a big part of this now. Part of this journey is for you to give back to yourself. And I think by seeing Kim in that one session, look at what it's led to. It's led to us having this conversation and podcast. I've spoken to you about exactly where you are in your head about writing a book is where I was a year ago. I've now written a chapter and I'm going to be putting an anthology out, and I'd love all my guests to write in there. So suddenly it's become accessible. It's become possible through these connections, which is it just makes the gift even more of a present in the present, you know, it doesn't it about, but we have to always be mindful of loving ourselves. And that's a hard thing to do. That's where Kim, I think maybe talking to Kim again or more, because it's loving ourselves is one of the things that we've told ourselves for years and years and years. Maybe I'm not worthy of that. Maybe I'm not, you know, and therefore, but we can give it to everyone else, and we will, because we know how much it means. Oh, we know how much it means. We'll give it to everyone else, but we're still lacking in fully receiving it for ourselves.
That's exactly it, because we're good at dealing with other people's problems. We're good at healing other people, but when it comes to self-healing, we neglect ourselves in the sense that we don't think we're worthy. And you know what, since I was probably 12, 13, I've cut myself on a regular basis, because you know what, it was just the pain thing, and it was, for me, it was just, and I'm not going to lie, at the moment, going through my bad, I still do it now when I have bad days, but it's whereas previously, the way I look at it is, you know what, I harm myself. I don't need other people to harm me. I harm myself, so you don't need to do bad on me, because you know what, I feel guilty and I blame myself, and we all do. We all blame ourselves, but like I said earlier, it's not us. We're not the ones to blame, so we can stop hurting ourselves, and until that clicks in our mind to say, you know what, stop blaming yourself. And this is what that's exactly what happened to me. It's like, you know what, stop blaming yourself, Steve, because it's not you. And hence why we sit in here having a discussion in the sense of feeling, being
I'm loving the transparency of it, Steve, from yourself and also from me. It's an ongoing journey. you know, and trauma and addictions, whether it be addiction to drugs, weed, alcohol, self-harm, whatever, it's when it's associated and attached with trauma, it is this cycle. It's a thing, and that's why I'm so pleased that it's an ongoing journey, and that you've met Kim. You've met Kim, because this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of your journey, right? It really is your journey of healing finally and moving forward, and watching your son grow up into a beautiful young man is going to be a great part of your life. But what is next for you? What are you doing next?
You know what? Taking this positivity, keep going forward. And once we, like I says, once the podcast's out, I've spoken to my manager at work. I work for a big financial company, and you know what? I'm going to share the podcast within the whole of the company that I work for, and there's probably about 100,000 of us that work for the same company. So it's going to go out to a lot of people, and I just want people to know, you know what, you're not alone. There's help out there. Just don't be afraid, and don't think that you can't speak to anyone, because you can. And especially in any community, doesn't matter if you're from the Asian or the Caribbean or whatever community you're from, doesn't matter. Just the hardest step is the first step of opening your mouth and saying, you know what, I was once you've done that, you go out there and you know what, you hit it. And I know, like we've spoken previously, I want to try and get some work on myself in that sense. I want to try and get some qualifications, and I want to be able to go to my local authority and say, I would like to do a mindful session with primary school kids, because I think kids from the age of 6, 7, 8, 9 need to be made aware.
Oh my God, don't they?
Mentality.
They really do. And coming from you, that would be fabulous. And so, this is the gift, in the gift of bad experiences, if you like, is just that, because you will reach those children, and especially the boys. These boys need a male role model, especially if they haven't got their father. They need a male role model. And sharing a bit of your own story as well within it, it just kind of makes it authentic. It's like, this is coming from someone who has experienced it. You haven't just gone to college and read about it. This is coming from the heart, it's from the soul. So I am so glad that you came on today. It's a really important message that you are getting out there. And when you were speaking, part of me wanted to say as well that I bet some people, they're afraid to talk to someone, but when they do, they'll be amazed at how much the people that wanted to open up or talk as well, because it's like a, you know, this silence spreads, doesn't it? But then once it starts to open up, openness spreads, positive spreads even bigger and faster and more. But I think it'd be releasing, and also, wow, I'm not on my own. Actually, when people do open up, they do understand, because they've maybe been through the same thing. Maybe, you know, don't be afraid to open up and speak up and get it out. Even if it's just in front of the mirror, I'd say, just like to begin with.
That's the hardest thing. It's like people always say, the first step is always the hardest. And you know what? When you've got it in your head, when you've set it in your head to say, you know what, I'm actually going to do it. Because I was there previously. I was like, I'm going to do it. You get to the point and you think, and then you go back, oh no, I'm not going to. No, there's nothing to be scared about. There's nothing to be afraid of, because you know what? We've got a brain, we've got a mind, we've got a voice. It's about time people use their voice in the right way and the right context to do the right thing. And you know what, especially for the next generation and the generation after that, because like I said, I don't want any kid to feel 1 millimeter of how I felt growing up as a kid. And I live here, like I said, my son's half and half with myself. I live on my own. I don't live with anyone. I've always had pets and stuff. But you know what? this is probably the first time I enjoy my own company in that sense, whereas previously I'm not.
Do you know what? My last guest that I've just spoken to, her interview's going out next actually. She was saying the same thing. I don't know if is that something that's happened since you've sort of had some work with Kim, or has that been going on for a while? That's quite a big thing.
Yeah, I think I started doing it a few years ago, but I think ever since I've spoken to Kim and seen Kim, it's just given me that extra boost. It's like taking an energy drink, like a Red Bull, and saying, right, you got wings, go and fly. And literally that's literally how I feel. It's like, nah, you know what, there's more to life than worrying about that, because at the end of the day, the more I worry about it, the less I speak about it. The more you speak about it, the less you worry about it. It needs to be that way around rather than the other way around. But now I'm not afraid to speak to anyone about anything, and I always say to people, my door's open, my phone's here. You need to talk to anyone, you've got no one to talk to, just give me a ring. I'll do your head in for an hour, in that sense, and then you'll be like, yeah, that's fine. And then you get. But like I said, I'm here to help, and if I can help one person, you know what, that's a bonus, because that's one person that's not going to feel like what I did.
Well, we'll end it there, Steve, but I will say I know for an absolute fact that you've helped more than one person with this interview once it goes out. I know you have. It's thank you so much for coming on Searching for Truth and sharing with me. A bit emotional at times, actually. That was. I knew it would be when I spoke to you on the phone. I was like, we've got too much synergy going on here. I know I'm going to be an emotional wreck.
But you know,
it's too bad.
It's just nice to be, like I said, it's just nice to have an open, honest discussion and conversation, and not having to think about what you say before you say it, in that sense, because your mind becomes conditioned to that, whereas you consciously think before you, like people say. But we do it in a different context. We think other thoughts rather than those thoughts, whereas now, you know what, those thoughts are there, but they're just there. They're not worrying me, they're not messing with my head in that sense, because I've got nothing to worry about, and I'm smiling, I'm happy, and you know what, today's been a glorious day. And like I said, we'll have probably more conversations and stuff, because as I says, there's a lot more out there. There's a lot more people that need help, and we're here to help them in any shape, way or form.
Thank you so much. Thank you, honestly.
It seriously has been a pleasure to talk to yourself and to share my story. Thank you very much for letting me have the forum and sharing.
You are more than welcome, and you are more than welcome back anytime. I want to hear the rest of the continuing journey of yours, because I know it'll be good and it'll be inspiring, and I know it's going to help a lot of children, so it's definitely something I want to get an update on.
We definitely, not a problem. I look forward to it.
All right, I'll let you go, and then I'll speak to you in a bit.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm so grateful to Steve coming on Searching for Truth, getting out in the open, the importance of sharing and communicating, especially within communities that it's not the norm to do that, because he's testament to the effects of that, the long-term effects of that. But Steve is also testament to coming out of that the other end, and is proving to himself that this journey of healing is also very rewarding once you start coming out the other end. And I say it again, sharing was healing for me. And if any of you are watching this and thinking, you know what, I think I'd like to share my story, or I think I'm ready to talk to someone, then do it. Get it out. Even if it's just admitting what happened to yourself first. just that in itself is a release. So I'm really hoping that Steve has encouraged some of you to share what's going on inside and the importance of that. So please do, as always, leave your views in the comments, and this will be extremely helpful and encouraging for Steve and other survivors speaking out about their trauma, childhood trauma. And share this video. And if you like this video and you'd like to see more of Searching for Truth, then do hit on the subscribe button. So that is all from me on Searching for Truth, but I will be back again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.